Hi, I'm Charles Lee, Director of Advocacy of Audubon, Florida. Audubon, Florida believes that water quality and water management problems north of Lake Okeechobee in the Everglades can be solved through preservation of the cattle ranch industry and restoration of a more natural relationship between water and the landscape. Through collaboration and innovation, landowners and conservation organizations are finding common ground to make real progress.
During 2004 and 5, we dumped enough water out of this lake to meet all of our water supply needs for people, for farms and cities for 6 years. And in the spring of 2006, we were dumping Wilma's water. In the spring of 2007, we were in a drought, and the farmers were getting cut back 45% on the water that they needed to grow their crops. We just need to rebuild the water management system to hold more water and to retain more nutrients. And if we can do that, we're going to keep Florida green and beautiful. We can keep this lake and its wonderful fishing and tourism economy beautiful. We can protect the water supply of all the farms around Lake Okeechobee. We can protect the water supply of the lower East Coast by sending this water that we saved, instead of throwing away, by sending it back and replenishing the Everglades and the Biscayne Aquifer. That gives us great opportunity to work with private landowners and say, can you guys help us meet our water management needs? If we're going to spend money to put water in a reservoir and spend money to treat it in a filter marsh, why can't we spend money to give it to private landowners and say, will you guys help us meet these water management goals?
The Dispersed Water Management Project at Jimmy Wall's Rafter T Ranch provides 500 acre-feet of water detention on 1,395 acres near Arbuckle Creek. This project uses flashboard risers and a small pump station combined with a pre-existing levee to provide this detention at a very low cost. It's an example of how ranchers in the northern Everglades can be paid for environmental services that help the whole watershed.
What we did, we converted one of our marsh pastures, is about 150 acres, into a stormwater treatment area by building a dike around it. We were enabled to get a grant from NRCS through their EQIP program to build the dike, and in South Florida Water Management District paid for some of the other structure to go in, including a pump. So now all the water in the ranch, instead of being pumped into Arbuckle Creek at any time, is all pumped into this 150-acre storm treatment area. And from there, it builds up to a maximum elevation of 48 feet above sea level, and then it flows over the top of a flashboard riser into Arbuckle Creek.
They actually have a lot of these landscapes that we hope we can use to rebuild Lake Okeechobee. And again, you know, if we will hire them to help us fix our problems, it gives them one more source of income. It keeps them on the tax rolls. They're still producing food and fiber, and we're helping to restore Lake Okeechobee, and we're helping to protect the water supply future for Florida.
Linda McCarthy is an environmental scientist with Lykes Brothers Incorporated, one of Florida's leading cattle producers. Linda explains the Lykes West Waterhole project, which impounds water on 2,500 acres. This project has produced some outstanding water quality improvements. An initial test resulted in removal of 3.3 metric tons of phosphorus during an 11-week test in 2009. More recent measurements that Linda will tell us about are even more promising.
But because of the cost that agriculture has, one of the things that's been we're trying to do is to have multiple uses on a parcel. So what Lykes has done is we have cattle ranching, we have hunting leases, we have cabbage palm harvesting, and now we can potentially add a payment for environmental services component, which will help us pay the bills, pay the taxes, keep the land in a relatively natural condition, and as unintensively used as possible. The West Waterhole project is about a 2,500 acre project where water is taken in from the regional system canal and it's dispersed across the property, and sheet flows down to the south, down to a discharge point where it goes back into the canal a couple miles downstream. In the 3 years of actually running it, we've removed approximately 13 tons of phosphorus. So that's pretty good achievement, we think.
And now we'll speak with Bud Adams of Adams Ranch, one of the icons in the rancher community in the area north of Lake Okeechobee.
In passing these ranches down from generation to generation, you have a problem of liquidity. And we have tremendous investment in tens of thousands of acres of land and cattle. None of that is of a very liquid nature. And by doing an easement, why, it would give us liquidity to pay our obligations, pay our taxes, and to settle with any family members that didn't wish to stay in the cattle business. The reason this particular land is so important, it's on the Kissimmee Prairie, which drains down the Kissimmee River into Lake Okeechobee, which drains into the Everglades. All of this is tied into your water supply from Mammoth to Melbourne. All of these coastal cities depend on this great watershed. Now, there are already builders seeking permits to build great cities on this land. And if we wait until this land is fragmented, it's going to affect your water flow, your hydrology for all of the peninsula of Florida. It also, we have an enormous number of automobiles in this state. It's increased tremendously, yet our air still is good. Where is the carbon going? The carbon is going into these trees, this grass. It's being stored in our soil. So from the standpoint of clean air and clean water, wildlife, these large ranches are exceedingly important. And it's not just for my lifetime, they need to be preserved right on and on.
Water farming is a particular kind of dispersed water management that can turn old fallow citrus groves into important water storage and detention areas. In Indian River County, Evans Properties has entered into a contract with the South Florida Water Management District for a pilot project to reflood 970 acres. The project is now under construction and will soon be in operation. When completed, over 4,200 acre feet or 1.3 billion gallons of water can be prevented from flowing into the Indian River estuary each year. Reducing that water flow will help reverse damage to the estuary.
Evans believes, as a number of larger landowners around here, and smaller actually, that a temporary solution to the Indian River Lagoon is absolutely necessary before the reservoirs that are contemplated in the SERP project implementation happens maybe 20, 30 years from now. This is a very efficient solution for land that is currently fallow due to the greening disease in the citrus industry. In this particular region, there's probably 50 or 60,000, if not more, acres that could be converted fairly quickly. And a number of properties require very little conversion expense.
The acres, we're going to spend about $300,000 in the conversion of the project to where it can hold the water that we're talking about. And the operations are, depending on how much we pump, will add to that based on the pump operation. But mostly 55 or 60 inches of rain will fall on this and will not be allowed to drain off unless it exceeds the ability to safely hold it. In the summertime, when there's excess water, if there's capacity inside the grove, if it's not already full, then we would withdraw water from this canal, which is maintained by the county and flows into C-24 about a mile downstream from here. When the water were to get, if you were to have excessive rain like a hurricane or something that filled this thing beyond its ability to discharge, the standard V-notch weir that discharged into C-24 as a grove operation would still be the same discharge facility that's used to take the water out of here when it starts to reach that high level. So that notching that weir will not be changed as a part of this project, and it really complies with the same permit operation features that existed when it was a citrus grove.
Here again is Linda McCarthy with Likes, describing the Nicodemus Slough project. This 16,000 acre project on the west side of Lake Okeechobee will store at least 30,000 acre feet of water, helping to better manage water in the lake and reduce discharges down canals to the estuaries. This is another example of how big water management and ecological benefits can happen quickly and economically by paying landowners to perform important environmental services.
Okay, the main purpose of the project is going to be water storage. It'll be taking the high water off of Lake Okeechobee. We'll be getting the water out of the lake through the C5 culvert, which is located on the western side of the lake along State Road 78. So the water will come in the culvert, it'll get pumped up at the first pump station about 1.5 miles away from the road. There's a borrow ditch along the southern end of the Herbert Hoover Dike that will convey the water up to the western edge of the property. In the northwest corner of the project, it's approximately where the second pump station will be, where the water will be discharged onto the property. And this is where the water will enter the project on the very western edge of it. Okay, the project there'll be 3 or 4 diversion berms constructed throughout the project. It will go north-south. The water's going to be staged at about 2 feet depth throughout the project. We hope to be able to store about 30,000 acre feet of water. And to do that, since the elevation of the landscape goes from about 30 feet down to 14 feet, we have to put some berms in there to stage the water down. The berms will have culverts in them, so we can manage the water through the culverts depending upon what the different cells are looking like and what the climate is, how much water we're getting out of the lake, how much rainfall we're getting. Okay, there's 2 options for discharge, 3 options total for the water. We can either hold it if there's no water needed anywhere else. If there's water later in the dry season when the Caloosahatchee needs it, we can discharge through the C19 canal into Lake Okeechobee and into the Caloosahatchee River. Or if they want the water management district wants the water back into the lake, we'll be able to put the water back into the lake once again through C5. So C5 is our structure both in and out of the lake.
The Secretary of the Interior, Ken Salazar, came down and has started a Headwaters National Wildlife Refuge. And the idea is that north of Lake Okeechobee, we're going to try to make a National Wildlife Refuge. And the hope is it'll be 50,000 acres of land that we're going to buy, native cover, and make it a National Wildlife Refuge, but another 100,000 acres of conservation area where we're going to buy conservation easements. And as part of that, we will plug their ditches and restore their wetlands. And we're going to run some models on that to try to find out how much of that water can we actually catch and keep out of Lake Okeechobee. 150,000 acres of land, depending on where it was, you might get 150,000 acre feet of storage out of that. That's 3 or 4 inches off Lake Okeechobee just for this one project. And when we talk about working with private landowners, there's a variety of programs that they can get into. And our goal for getting Lake Okeechobee water levels under control is get them to store more water. And whether they do it through a payment for environmental services, where we just write them a check and say for the next 10 years we want you to hold water in that basin, or whether they do it through a conservation easement through some of the federal farm programs, or whether it could happen through the National Wildlife Refuge or the Headwaters Refuge Initiative. These are all things that help hold water in the watershed. And so when we go to farmers, we say there's different ways to do this depending on what your business plan is. And with the Florida legislature, they can help us with a payment for environmental services. That's one of the programs that they can help allocate money for. But there's a whole bunch of different varieties of getting this done.
Audubon encourages all ranchers in the Okeechobee watershed to learn about the benefits of participating in a payment for services project to store and clean the water that is flowing toward Lake Okeechobee. Audubon also wants decision makers in state government to know that programs that purchase conservation easements from ranchers, or programs that create a second line of business for ranchers by cleaning and storing water, are a good investment. We hope that more funding will be made available for these programs so they can be significantly expanded.